Commander players love to complain, but there are some archetypes that just don't fit too well in a casual setting where people want to have a good time and play their cards. So let's look at a few resource denial strategies that you should avoid, unless of course you have a play group that's okay with this type of thing, because I know there's people out there that are like, oh, my play group, anything goes. If that's you, that's fine, but not everyone has a play group that they play with all the time. First up, we have decks based around stacks and tax effects. Stacks effects will typically deny resources or apply some type of restriction to what your opponents are able to do. The good news is that any mass land denial or land destruction is covered under the bracket system, so you don't have to worry about that for brackets 1, 2, and 3. There's also what people consider light stacks effects that you're much more likely to run into, such as Authority of the Consuls, which is an enchantment for 1 white mana. Creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped. Whenever a creature an opponent controls enters, you gain 1 life. This was just recently reprinted in a Final Fantasy Precon. One of my friends plays a life gain deck, and they played this on turn 1 while 2 of the other players at the table were playing hasty aggro decks, and this completely shut down their strategies until they were able to remove it from the battlefield, and it took several turns for that to happen because they weren't able to draw into their enchantment removal early enough, and that happens even if you play a lot of removal. Sometimes you just might not get a hold of it when you need it. Tax effects will usually require your opponent to pay some kind of extra cost to be able to do something. An example of a tax effect is Thalia, Guardian of Thraben, which is a 2-mana legendary creature, 2/1 first strike. Non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast. Thalia is a card that could be slightly inconvenient when it's on the battlefield. You know, it's annoying that you have to pay 1 more to cast your spells, and if you want to remove it, it's likely that you're going to need to pay an additional mana to even remove the Thalia. However, the problem with cards like this are they're usually combined with other tax and stacks effects, which puts you into this situation where it's like all your spells cost 3 more to cast, you can only play 1 spell per turn, you can't do this, you can't do that, and then it just doesn't let you play the game. Next up, we have hand discard. The goal of these decks is to keep your opponent with the smallest hand size as possible through an abundance of discard effects. Much like stacks, hand discard effects on their own aren't that big of a deal. Yeah, they're slightly inconvenient or a bit annoying, but overall it's the high density of these effects when combined with each other which leads to kind of like this feels bad of like, oh, I can't even play the game. And finally, I want to look at something that many people would just classify as control, but I like to think of as just creature denial. And what I mean by this is decks that look to lock your opponents out from playing creatures by repeatedly removing them. So if your opponent plays a creature, they know this is not going to stay on the battlefield until my next turn. There are plenty of commanders and combinations of cards that will stop your opponents from keeping creatures on the battlefield, and it just leads to a really unfun play experience for your opponents, especially because a lot of people in the format play creature-based strategies. I had mentioned Vincent Valentine in my VV video, talking about how Vincent seemed like a cool commander, until you realize that all Vincent is asking you to do is to have your opponent's creatures die, which means you're likely going to fill your deck with ways to trigger your commander's ability, which leads to a situation where your deck is just full of constant removal and edict effects and your opponents can't keep any creatures on the battlefield. The good news is that if they don't remove Vincent, at least the game will end soon because he'll knock them out via commander damage. But still, that's not really a play pattern that a lot of people enjoy. And please don't confuse this with saying that you shouldn't play removal. You should play removal. Single target removal, board wipes, whatever in between. Removal is an important part of the game, and you should go into the game expecting that any creature or permanent you put on the battlefield can and probably will be removed. I understand that these strategies are part of the game and in a lot of ways help to balance out other aspects of the game. However, for many players, resource denial strategies go against the spirit of the format. It may seem like commander players complain about everything, but the truth is, for many people, they just want to cast their spells and have a good time. To quote my friend, commander is more about the vibe. You either get that or you're just not there yet. Let me know in the comments down below how you feel about resource denial strategies. How do you feel when a single one of these types of cards pops up in a game? Does it make you upset, or you're just like, whatever, I guess that's what I need to remove? Thanks for watching. Until next time.